In discussing the strengths of intelligent design, ID, and addressing the criticisms it faces, particularly the claim that it lacks empirical support and is not recognized within the scientific community except in criticisms, I find it essential to clarify and emphasize the robust, foundational arguments that underscore ID. My exploration and understanding of ID have led me to see its viability as a scientific hypothesis grounded in empirical observations, contrary to the claims that it is purely speculative or unfounded. Empirical foundations of intelligent design. Irreducible complexity as empirical evidence. One of the key evidences for ID comes from the study of irreducibly complex systems. These are biological configurations that consist of several interacting parts, where the removal of any one part causes the system to cease functioning effectively. Systems such as the bacterial flagellum, which acts as a microscopic outboard motor, and complex biochemical cascades demonstrate such complexity. The empirical observation here is that these systems, in their entirety, are critical for the functions they perform. The challenge to evolutionary explanations arises because the stepwise, gradual adaptations proposed by Darwinian mechanisms cannot account for the intermediate stages of such systems, stages that must be fully present to be functional, and confer a survival advantage. Specified complexity in information systems. Another strong point for ID is found in the nature of information systems, particularly in DNA. The sequences in DNA represent high levels of specified complexity. They are not just random strings of molecules, but are intricately arranged to store and transmit precise instructions for building and maintaining an organism. From my perspective, and that of many ID proponents, such specified complexity parallels what we observe in human-designed systems known to require intelligence, such as computer codes and languages. This specificity and complexity, observable and measurable, suggest an intelligent source. Fine-tuning of the universe. Observations from cosmology regarding the fine-tuning of physical constants also provide empirical support for ID. Constants that dictate the fundamental behaviors of the universe appear finely tuned to an astonishing precision for life to exist. This fine-tuning extends to the force of gravity, the strength of the electromagnetic force, and the specific masses of subatomic particles, among others. These constants, necessary for the emergence of a habitable planet, suggest deliberate calibration. Addressing the critiques and the scientific dialogue. The perception that ID is not supported within the scientific community largely stems from a misunderstanding of what constitutes empirical evidence and how theories are evaluated. While it's true that ID has faced significant pushback and is often met with skepticism, this does not stem from a lack of empirical grounding. Rather, the controversy often revolves around differing interpretations of what empirical evidence entails and the philosophical implications of inferring design in nature. Critics often argue that ID fails when its hypotheses are tested, but this is a misrepresentation. Tests that have purportedly disproven ID often fail to address the actual predictions of ID or misapply the principles ID advocates. For instance, experiments that attempt to show the feasibility of stepwise evolution of complex systems often overlook the necessity of simultaneous developments in interdependent components. In my advocacy and study of ID, I emphasize that a fair assessment of any scientific theory, including ID, should be grounded in unbiased examination of the empirical evidence and a willingness to consider non-traditional explanations within the scope of observed phenomena. The dismissal of ID in some academic circles more frequently reflects philosophical biases rather than a straightforward assessment of the evidence. Conclusion. In summary, My stance is that intelligent design is not only a legitimate scientific hypothesis, but one that is supported by empirical evidence observable in nature. The complexity and specificity observed in biological systems, alongside the fine-tuning of universal constants, provide a compelling case for ID that merits serious consideration and further investigation within the scientific community.